A woman walked into Hayes' gun shop on a Tuesday morning with a scar running from her left temple to her jaw. Three men by the counter started laughing before she even closed the door. But they did not know that six men who had laughed at her the same way were now buried in unmarked graves across three territories. They did not know that the woman standing before them had spent 14 years becoming something most people could not imagine. They did not know that today at noon one more man would come for her. And they did not know that what happened next would become a story people told for generations. "Look what the wind blew in," one of them said loud enough for everyone to hear. Half her face torn up, and she still thinks she can handle iron. The woman was Aaliyah Washington. She was 47 years old, black, and she had spent the last 14 years carrying a weight most people would break under. The scar was new, only 3 weeks old, a gift from a man who wanted her to remember what was coming. The men laughing at her had no idea who she was, no idea what she had done, no idea that she had tracked men through mountains and rivers and endless plains, no idea that she had learned to shoot until her hands bled, no idea that she had become the thing her enemies feared most. Aaliyah did not look at the men. She looked at the exits first, the way a soldier does, then the windows, then where the counter ended and the back room began. Her boots made soft sounds on the wooden floor as she moved toward the far corner of the shop. Not browsing, not asking questions, just positioning herself with her back against the wall, her right hand resting near the edge of her worn brown coat. The shop smelled like gun oil and old leather. Dust motes hung in the slanted morning light coming through the front windows. A clock ticked somewhere near the register, steady and patient, counting down to noon. Aaliyah stood perfectly still, her eyes occasionally drifting toward the front door. She was waiting for someone, or something, and everyone in the shop could feel it even if they did not understand it yet. The tall one, Jamal, grinned at his younger companion. "You lost, ma'am. Dress shop is 2 doors down." His friend Darius laughed, still trying to earn his place with the older men. Aaliyah's voice came out quiet and flat. "I am exactly where I need to be." Something in her tone made Darius's smile fade just a little. She was older than both of them, wearing a worn coat and dusty boots that had seen more miles than most people traveled in a lifetime. Her hands looked rough, the kind of hands that had spent years holding things that were not gentle. Her hair was pulled back, simple and practical streaks of gray running through the black. But it was the scar that drew the eye, a long, clean line that told a story she had no interest in sharing. Jamal nudged Darius with his elbow. "What are you here for, then?" "We do not have much in the way of 'I am waiting,'" she said. "Just that. Nothing more." She shifted her weight slightly and rested one hand near the edge of her coat where a holster would be. Not threatening, not nervous, just aware. The clock kept ticking. Outside, the street was quiet. Too quiet for a Tuesday morning in a Texas border town where cattle and commerce usually kept things moving. This was the kind of silence that settled over a place when something was about to change, when the air itself held its breath. An older man stood near the display of rifle cases, pretending to examine a Winchester, but really watching the woman in the corner. Otis Franklin, 70 years old, former Buffalo soldier. He had been in the shop when Aaliyah walked in, and something about her had caught his attention immediately. Not the scar, not the clothes, the way she moved. Otis had seen enough soldiers in his time to recognize someone who knew how to read a room, someone who understood exits and angles and lines of sight. This woman was not shopping. She was positioning. He glanced at her again, careful not to stare. She stood perfectly still, her eyes occasionally drifting toward the front door, waiting for something or someone. Otis felt a cold recognition move through his chest. He knew who this woman was, had known the moment she walked in. And if he was right, today was going to be a day people talked about for a very long time. Jamal was still talking, his voice carrying that edge of mockery that young men use when they want to feel bigger than they are. "You waiting for someone special? Boyfriend coming to buy you something pretty?" Aaliyah did not answer. She just looked at him with pale brown eyes that had seen too much, and Jamal's grin faltered. Something about that look. It was not anger. It was not offense. It was something colder, something that made a man feel like he had just said something foolish without realizing it yet. Darius shifted his weight, suddenly uncomfortable. Jamal, maybe we should. The bell above the door rang. Everyone turned. A man stepped inside, mid-50s, solid build, carrying a small metal box under one arm. He wore a clean shirt and practical boots. His face had the weathered look of someone who had spent time outdoors and in hard places, but his hands were steady and his eyes were sharp. Marcus Hayes, the owner. Marcus took 2 steps into his shop and stopped. His eyes found the woman in the corner, and everything changed. The box slipped in Marcus's grip. Not much, just enough to tilt, just enough to show that something had hit him hard and fast. His face went still, not surprised, not confused, recognizing. The kind of recognition that comes with weight, with history, with things that do not get spoken out loud in mixed company. Jamal started to say something, probably another joke, probably another comment he would regret later, but Marcus lifted one hand. "Boys," Marcus said quietly, "get out." Jamal blinked. "What out? Now?" Marcus's voice did not get louder. It did not need to. There was something in it that had not been there a moment ago, something that sounded less like a shopkeeper and more like someone who had once given orders that men followed without question. Darius took a step toward the door immediately. Jamal hesitated, confused and annoyed. "Boss, we are just now." The word came out flat and final. Marcus's eyes had not left the woman in the corner, but his posture had changed. Straighter, harder, like a soldier coming to attention. Jamal's face flushed red, but he turned and walked toward the door. Darius followed, glancing back once with wide eyes. The bell rang as they left. The door closed. And then there were 3 people in the gun shop. Marcus, Aaliyah, and Otis still standing by the rifle cases, suddenly very aware that he was witnessing something he probably should not be part of, but could not walk away from. Marcus set the metal box down on the counter with a soft thud. His hands were steady again, but his breathing had changed. Slower, deeper. He looked at Otis. "Sir, I apologize, but I need to ask you to step outside for a few minutes." Otis nodded slowly. He had been around long enough to know when to leave. He walked toward the door, his boots quiet on the wood. But just before he reached it, he paused. "Ma'am," he said softly without turning around, "I know who you are." Aaliyah did not respond. Otis stepped outside and closed the door behind him. The bell rang one last time, and then it was just Marcus and Aaliyah Washington. The silence stretched out between them. Not awkward, not tense, just heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. Marcus took a slow breath and let it out through his nose. Then he walked around the counter and stopped about 10 feet away from her. Close enough to talk, far enough to show respect. "Mrs. Washington," he said quietly, "I did not expect to see you today." "I know," Aaliyah said. Her voice was steady but tired, like someone who had been walking for a very long time and could finally see the end of the road. "Is it today?" Marcus asked. The question hung in the air between them. She looked at him for a long moment, those brown eyes measuring something he could not see. Then she nodded once, yes. "How long? Maybe an hour," Aaliyah said. "Maybe less." Marcus closed his eyes briefly, like a man absorbing bad news he had hoped would not come. When he opened them again, something had shifted in his expression. "I can help," he said. "No." "Ma'am, you saved my life. Let me—" "No, Marcus." Her voice was not unkind, just final. She shifted slightly and he saw the edge of a holster under her coat. Old leather, well worn. The gun inside it would be the same. Familiar, reliable. The gun she had bought from this very shop 14 years ago. Marcus swallowed hard. "At least let me close the shop. Clear everyone out. He will see that," she said. "He will know something is wrong." "Better if it looks normal." "Normal," Marcus repeated almost to himself. "Nothing about this is normal." "No," Aaliyah said with a small, sad smile. "I suppose not." Marcus moved back behind the counter, his hands resting flat on the glass surface. He stared down at the display of pistols beneath, but his mind was clearly somewhere else, somewhere older, somewhere colder. How did you get the scar? He asked quietly, though he already knew the answer. 3 weeks ago, Aaliyah said. Cheyenne, he found you, he did, and you let him live. She was quiet for a moment. Then I was not ready. He was faster than I expected. Marcus looked up at her, and for the first time since he had walked in, there was something close to fear in his eyes. Not for himself, for her. What if he is faster again? Marcus asked. Then I will die, Aaliyah said. The words came out simple and calm, like she was stating a fact about the weather or the price of grain. Marcus's voice dropped even lower. After everything you have survived, you are going to let it end here. In my shop. I am not letting anything happen, Marcus. I am finishing what I started 14 years ago. She pushed away from the wall, slightly straightening. And if I die doing it, at least it ends. One way or another, it ends today. Marcus opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. He had learned a long time ago that some people could not be talked out of the path they had chosen. He had also learned that the ones who talked the calmest were often the most dangerous. Outside boots scraped on the wooden sidewalk. Both of them heard it. Otis Franklin positioning himself where he could watch the street, where he could bear witness to whatever was coming. Marcus noticed Aaliyah's eyes flick toward the sound, then back to him. He stayed, Marcus said. I know, Aaliyah replied. He said he knows who you are. Old Buffalo Soldier, she said. He would. Marcus leaned forward slightly. Mrs. Washington, if this goes wrong, it will not. But if it does, then you tell them I died doing what I chose to do. Nothing more. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small leather pouch, set it on a barrel near her position, opened it slowly. Inside were bullets, brass cartridges clean and ready. She did not load them, not yet, just counted them one by one like she was taking inventory of exactly how much life she had left to give. 6 bullets, 6 chambers in the Colt revolver under her coat, the same number as the men she had already killed. Marcus watched her, his throat tight. He had seen men prepare for battle before, had done it himself back when he wore a different uniform and answered to different names, but there was something about watching this woman, this quiet, scarred, patient woman counting bullets in his gun shop, that made the whole thing feel heavier than any fight he had ever been part of. The clock on the wall ticked. Outside, a horse whinnied somewhere down the street. Marcus straightened up, running one hand over his short gray hair. He looked older suddenly, tired. You know I have to let them back in eventually, he said. Jamal and Darius. They work here. I know, Aaliyah said. They are going to ask questions. Let them ask. Marcus nodded slowly. Then he walked to the door and opened it. Jamal and Darius were standing on the sidewalk, arms crossed, trying to look casual and failing. Otis stood a little further down, leaning against a post, watching the street like he was waiting for a storm. You can come back in, Marcus said. Jamal pushed off the wall immediately, anger still simmering in his expression. What the hell was that about, boss? You cannot just. Marcus cut him off. I can, and I did. Now get inside and shut your mouth. Jamal's face went red, but he walked past Marcus without another word. Darius followed quieter, more thoughtful. Otis stayed outside. Marcus caught his eye. The old scout gave a single small nod. Message received. He would keep watch. Marcus closed the door and turned back to his shop. Aaliyah was still in her corner, still counting bullets, still waiting. Jamal was behind the counter now, glaring at her like she had personally insulted him. Who the hell is she anyway? Some kind of special customer? Marcus did not answer right away. He walked slowly to the center of the shop, positioning himself between Jamal and Aaliyah. Not obviously protective, just present. Jamal, he said carefully, have you ever heard the name Washington? Jamal frowned on my charm. Washington, like the cattle outfit up north, like the widow, Marcus said. The words settled into the room slowly like dust, finding places to land. Darius's eyes went wide. Wait, you mean, that is a myth, Jamal said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. That is just a story people tell about some woman who went crazy and The door opened. Otis stepped inside, his face serious. She is not a myth, son. Jamal turned on him. And who the hell are you, Otis? Did not flinch. Name is Otis Franklin. I rode with the 10th Cavalry for 20 years. Buffalo soldiers fought in the Indian Wars. Seen things most men only hear about in campfire stories. He looked past Jamal to Aaliyah in the corner. And I know a legend when I see one. Aaliyah set down the last bullet and closed the pouch. She looked at Otis with something close to recognition. You are Franklin. Rode with Isaiah. Otis nodded slowly. I did, ma'am, long time ago. I heard about what happened, Aaliyah said quietly. The ambush at Red Creek. You heard right, Otis said. His expression went hard. Saved some men that day, lost more. Something passed between them, an understanding that did not need words. People who had seen violence, people who had survived when others had not, people who carried names in their memory like stones in their pockets. Jamal looked between them, confused and increasingly nervous. Will someone please explain what the hell is going on? Marcus turned to face him. You want to know who she is? Yeah, Jamal said. I want to know why you kicked us out of our own workplace for some random woman with a... Watch your mouth, Marcus said, and his voice went cold. Jamal stopped mid-sentence. Marcus took a breath, then spoke carefully. Her name is Aaliyah Washington. 14 years ago, her husband and 9 other men were killed in a camp raid up in Montana Territory. The men who did it were the McCrae brothers, 6 of them. Darius's face had gone pale. The McCrae gang. That is right, Marcus said. Jamal shook his head. Okay, so she lost her husband. That is terrible, but what is that? She tracked them, Otis said quietly. All 6 of them, across 3 territories, over 18 months. Jamal laughed, but it sounded forced. Come on, 1 woman against 6. She brought them all back dead, Marcus finished. The laughter died. Darius took a step backward, his hand gripping the edge of the counter. Jamal stared at Aaliyah in the corner, really looking at her for the first time. Seeing past the scar, past the worn coat and dusty boots. Seeing something else. That is not possible, Jamal said, but his voice had lost all its confidence. It is possible, Marcus said, because she is standing right there. Aaliyah met Jamal's eyes across the room. Calm, patient, unmoved. You boys thought I came here to buy a gun, she said softly. I did not. I came here because this is where I bought the gun I used to kill 6 men. And the 7th brother wants me to remember that before he tries to kill me. The words hung in the air like smoke. Darius's voice came out as barely a whisper. The 7th brother, she nodded once. He will be here soon. The silence that followed was different from before. Heavier, like the air before a thunderstorm. Jamal and Darius stood behind the counter, neither of them moving. Their earlier confidence had evaporated completely, replaced by something closer to fear. Otis remained by the door, his weathered face unreadable, but his eyes never left Aaliyah. Marcus moved slowly to the window and looked out at the street. Empty. Quiet. The kind of quiet that made a man's skin prickle. When he asked without turning around, Aaliyah checked a small pocket watch she pulled from her coat. He said noon. It is 11:40 now. 20 minutes, Marcus said. His jaw tightened. You could leave right now. Take your horse and ride out the back way. No, Mrs. Washington, I have been running from this for 3 weeks, Marcus. I am done running. She said it so calmly, like she was discussing the weather, but Marcus heard what was underneath. The exhaustion. The weight of 14 years carrying something too heavy for one person to carry. Darius found his voice first. It came out shaky and young. Ma'am, I do not understand. If there were 6 brothers and you and they are all dead, Aaliyah said simply. You can say it. Darius swallowed. Then where did the 7th one come from? Aaliyah looked down at the leather pouch in her hands, ran her thumb along the stitching. Old and worn like everything else about her. Nobody knew about him, she said. He was born after the others, different mother, raised separate from the family business. Jamal's voice came out quieter than before. What family business? Killing Otis said from the doorway. Thieving. The McCrae brothers ran raids from Wyoming to Montana for near 15 years, left a trail of bodies and burned homesteads wherever they went. Marcus turned from the window. How do you know so much about them? Otis's expression went dark. Because I helped hunt them once. Back in '79, Army sent 3 companies after them. We tracked them for 2 months through the mountains. What happened? Darius asked. They disappeared, Otis said. Like ghosts, we never found them. He looked at Aaliyah with something close to reverence, but she did. Aaliyah set the pouch down and walked slowly to the window, not close to Marcus, just near enough to see the street. The sun was climbing toward its highest point. Shadows were shortening. In another hour, there would be no shadows at all. High noon, like something out of an old story. Except this was not a story. This was real. This was 14 years of weight and blood and choices that could not be undone. You want to know how I found them? Aaliyah asked quietly. Nobody answered, but she could feel them listening, all of them. She kept her eyes on the street as she spoke. The night they hit our camp, I was not in my tent. I was checking the horses. We had been having troubles with predators, and I wanted to make sure the lines were secure. Her voice was steady, flat, like she had told this story before, but only to herself in the dark when nobody else could hear. I heard the gunfire first. Then I heard Isaiah call my name. Just once, and then nothing. Marcus's hands curled into fists at his sides. I hid in the shadows between the horse line and the supply wagons. Aaliyah continued. Watch them ride through the camp. 6 men laughing, taking what they wanted, killing anyone who tried to stop them. Darius made a small sound in his throat. I counted them, Aaliyah said. Made myself memorize their faces, the way they moved, the horses they rode, everything. She paused, her breath fogging the glass slightly. And then I made a choice. What choice? Jamal asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Aaliyah turned from the window to look at them. Really look at them. I could go back east, back to my family, back to safety and civilization and everything I knew before I married a soldier and moved west. She touched the scar on her face absently. Or I could learn to be the thing they feared most. Otis nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes. Marcus already knew this part. He had heard pieces of it before years ago in a different context. But hearing her say it now, with 20 minutes left on the clock, made it feel different, more final. I spent 6 months learning to shoot, Aaliyah said. Found a Pinkerton man in Denver who would take my money and not ask too many questions. Practiced 8 hours a day until my hands bled and my shoulder turned black from the recoil. She held up her right hand. Even from across the room, they could see the calluses, the scars. Then I found a Crow Scout in Wyoming territory, paid him to teach me how to track, how to read sign, how to move through country without being seen. Darius was staring at her like she was something from a dream or a nightmare. It took me 18 months to find all 6 of them, Aaliyah continued. They had scattered after the raid, thought they were safe, thought nobody would come for them. Her voice went quieter. They were wrong. The clock on the wall ticked. Outside, a dust devil spun down the empty street and disappeared. Marcus cleared his throat. Mrs. Washington, you do not have to. Yes, I do, she said, because those boys need to understand why I am here, why I am waiting, why this matters. She looked at Jamal and Darius directly. The first one I found was working as a ranch hand outside Billings. Thought he could blend in, live quiet, let the past stay buried. Jamal's face had gone pale. I walked up to him in broad daylight, Aaliyah said, told him my name, told him why I had come, gave him a chance to draw first. And Darius asked, his voice shaking. He drew. I was faster. The words were simple, final. No pride in them, no shame, just fact. The second one tried to run, Aaliyah continued. I tracked him for 3 days through the mountains, found him trying to cross a river at night. He drowned before I could reach him. Otis's expression did not change, but something in his posture shifted. Recognition of a particular kind of dedication, the kind that did not stop for weather or terrain or exhaustion. The third and fourth were together, Aaliyah said, brothers in blood and in crime. They barricaded themselves in a line shack and tried to wait me out. How long, Jamal asked. 5 days. I burned them out on the 6th. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. The fifth one was smart, Aaliyah said. He had changed his name, grown a beard, moved to a mining camp in Idaho, and kept his head down. She paused. But he made one mistake. He wrote to his mother, and I was watching her house. Darius looked like he might be sick. And the sixth, Otis asked quietly. Aaliyah's expression went hard. The sixth one was the leader, the one who had planned the raid, the one who killed Isaiah personally. She turned back to the window. I found him in a saloon in Cheyenne. He had gotten comfortable, thought enough time had passed, thought he was safe. What happened, Marcus asked, though part of him did not want to know. I challenged him in front of 30 witnesses, Aaliyah said. Old West style. Fair fight. He drew first. She touched her holster absently. I drew faster. The shop was completely silent now. Even the clock seemed to tick more quietly. Jamal's earlier mockery felt like something from another lifetime, another world. He looked at this woman with her worn coat and her scar and her quiet voice, and he could not reconcile her with the person he had been laughing at 20 minutes ago. Darius had backed up against the wall, his eyes wide. Otis stood like a statue by the door, bearing witness. Marcus moved away from the window and leaned against the counter. 6 men, 18 months. You never stopped. No, Aaliyah said. I did not. The clock struck 11:50, 10 minutes. Aaliyah took a slow breath, let it out through her nose, centered herself. 14 years had led to this moment. 14 years of grief and violence and hunting men through the wilderness. 14 years of being something other than human. Something harder. Something that did not break or bend or stop. And now it was almost over. One way or another. Marcus straightened up. Mrs. Washington, when this is over, if I am alive, Aaliyah interrupted gently. When this is over, Marcus repeated firmly, you are welcome in this shop anytime. No questions, no judgment, just respect. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once. Thank you, Marcus. 11:55, 5 minutes. The tension in the shop was thick enough to cut. Jamal and Darius had positioned themselves behind the counter low and protected. Both held rifles now, though their hands shook slightly. Otis stood near the back wall, his pistol held loosely at his side, ready but not aggressive. Marcus remained behind the counter, shotgun resting on the glass surface pointed toward the door. And Aaliyah stood in the center of the shop now, not hiding, not seeking cover, inviting. She had moved away from the corner deliberately, chosen open space, clear lines of sight in every direction. If Terrell McCrae wanted a fair fight, she would give him one. If he wanted to ambush her, he would have to work for it. Either way, she was ready. The clock ticked. Outside, the sun reached its highest point. Shadows disappeared completely. High noon in a Texas border town. Just like the old stories. Except this was not a story. This was real. And somewhere out there, getting closer with every passing second, was a man who had spent his whole life in the shadow of his brothers. A man who had finally found his purpose. A man who believed he was the hero of his own story, coming to avenge his murdered family. A man who did not know yet that the woman waiting for him had already died inside a long time ago, and that the scarred widow standing in Hayes' gun shop was not fighting for revenge anymore. She was fighting for peace. 11:58, 2 minutes. The street remained empty, but then faint and far away they heard it. Hoofbeats, slow, deliberate, unhurried, coming from the east end of town. Aaliyah's hand dropped to her gun, not drawing, just resting there, ready. Marcus's finger moved to the trigger of his shotgun. Otis's expression went hard and focused. Jamal and Darius held their breath. The hoofbeats got closer, slower than a man riding with purpose, faster than someone just passing through. The pace of someone who knew exactly where he was going and was not in any hurry to get there. Aaliyah took a slow breath, let it out through her nose, centered herself. 14 years had led to this moment. The hoofbeats stopped outside. There was a moment of perfect silence. Then boots hit the wooden sidewalk. Slow footsteps, confident, unhurried, getting closer. The door handle turned. The door opened slowly. A man stepped inside. He was tall and lean, maybe 45 years old, with skin that suggested mixed heritage, part white, part something else. Though in this light it was hard to say for certain. He dressed all in black except for a silver buckle on his belt. His hat was pulled low, but his eyes were visible beneath the brim. Cold, patient, calculating. His face was clean-shaven and his hands were steady. Not the hands of a clerk, the hands of someone who had been preparing for this moment for a very long time. He closed the door behind him with a soft click. The bell above it gave one small jingle, then fell silent. For a moment, nobody moved. The man's eyes swept the room, took in Marcus behind the counter with his shotgun, Otis against the wall with his pistol, Jamal and Darius crouched low with their rifles, and finally Aaliyah standing in the center of the shop waiting. His gaze settled on her and stayed there. A slow smile spread across his face. "Hello, Aaliyah," he said. His voice was soft, almost gentle. The kind of voice a man might use when greeting an old friend after a long absence. It made the hair on the back of Marcus's neck stand up. Terrell Aaliyah said simply. The man Terrell McCrae removed his hat with one hand and set it on a shelf near the door. A strangely polite gesture, like he was visiting someone's home and did not want to be rude. "You are punctual," he said. "I appreciate that. You told me noon." "It is noon." "So it is." He took 2 steps further into the shop. His hand rested casually near his holster, but he made no move to draw. "Not yet." Marcus's finger tightened on the trigger, but Aaliyah gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of her head. "Not yet." Terrell noticed the gesture, and his smile widened slightly. "You have made friends, I see. That is good. A woman should not die alone. I am not planning to die today," Aaliyah said calmly. "Neither am I," Terrell said. "But one of us will." He said it without anger, without malice, just stating a fact. Otis shifted his weight slightly, his cavalry training evident in the way he positioned himself for a clear shot if needed. Terrell noticed that too. He seemed to notice everything. "You are Franklin," Terrell said, glancing at Otis. "Rode with the 10th Cavalry. I have heard stories about you." Otis's expression did not change. "Cannot say I have heard any about you." "No," Terrell said. "You would not have. That was the point." He turned his attention back to Aaliyah. "Do you know why my brothers never knew about me?" he asked. Aaliyah did not answer, but she was listening. They all were. Terrell walked slowly along the edge of the shop, not approaching directly, just moving like a man taking his time with something he had been anticipating for years. "My mother was my father's second wife," he said. "Married him after the first one died. She did not know what kind of man he was, not at first. By the time she figured it out, she was already pregnant with me." He stopped near a display of ammunition boxes, ran his finger along one of them absently. "She left him before I was born, took a different name, raised me quiet, taught me to stay away from my brothers, said they were poison, said if I ever met them, they would drag me down into their world." "She was right," Aaliyah said quietly. Terrell's eyes flashed. "Was she? Because they are all dead now, and I am still standing." For the moment, Aaliyah said. Terrell laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was wrong in the tense silence of the shop. "You know what is funny," he said. "I actually believed her for most of my life. I stayed away, lived clean, got a job, kept my head down. I was good at it, being invisible, being nobody." He turned to face Aaliyah fully. "And then 12 years ago, I got a letter from a lawyer in Billings saying that my half-brother had been killed. Shot dead by a woman named Aaliyah Washington." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I did not believe it at first," Terrell continued. "Thought it was a mistake. But then another letter came. Another brother dead. Then another. Then another. His voice stayed soft, but something cold had crept into it. 6 letters over 18 months, all saying the same thing. My brothers were dead, and you were the one who killed them. They murdered my husband, Aaliyah said. They killed 9 innocent men. They deserved what they got. Maybe they did, Terrell said, but they were still my blood, and blood matters. Otis spoke up, his voice carrying the weight of experience. Blood does not excuse murder, son. Your brothers chose their path. They paid for it. Terrell looked at him with something close to pity. You do not understand. You are not family. You do not know what it is like to find out you had 6 brothers and they are all dead before you even knew their names. I know what it is like to lose men I served with, Otis said. Good men, men who did not deserve to die. Your brothers were not good men. They were my brothers, Terrell repeated, and this time there was steel in his voice. Jamal, still crouched behind the counter, could not help himself. But you never even met them. How can you? Terrell's eyes snapped to him. Jamal flinched back, suddenly reminded that he was talking to a man who had come here to kill someone. Just because I never met them does not mean I did not know them, Terrell said. I spent 2 years tracking their stories, talking to people who knew them, learning everything about them I could find. He looked back at Aaliyah. I know that James was the oldest, the leader, the one who planned the raids. I know that Thomas was the best shot, that Daniel could track a man through rock, that William handled the horses, that Robert kept the money, that Samuel was the youngest, always trying to prove himself. Each name landed like a stone. I learned their stories, Terrell said, and I learned yours. The rancher's wife who became a hunter, the woman who spent 18 months making sure my entire family died. Not your entire family, Aaliyah said. You are still here. For now, Terrell said. Marcus had heard enough. This does not have to end the way you think it does. You can walk away right now. Nobody else has to die. Terrell did not even look at him. That is not how this works. It can be, Marcus insisted. She killed your brothers because they killed her husband. If you kill her, someone will come for you, and it will never end. Is that what you want, to keep this going forever? I want justice, Terrell said. No, Otis said quietly. You want revenge. There is a difference. Terrell turned to him, genuinely curious. Is there? Because from where I am standing, they look the same. Aaliyah spoke before Otis could answer. Revenge is about making yourself feel better. Justice is about making things right. What I did to your brothers was not revenge. It was accounting. Terrell's smile was bitter. Accounting. That is a cold word for murder. They were not murdered, Aaliyah said. They were executed for crimes they committed and never paid for. Who made you judge and jury? Nobody, Aaliyah said. I made myself that because there was nobody else who would do it. The truth of that hung in the air. In 1884, in the Montana Territories, law was a distant thing. The nearest marshal might be 3 days' ride away. Justice was often something you made yourself or went without. Terrell knew that as well as anyone. So you took the law into your own hands, he said. I did, Aaliyah said. And now I am doing the same, Terrell said. Aaliyah nodded slowly. Yes, you are. And that is why one of us is going to die today. Terrell moved away from the ammunition display and took another step toward the center of the shop. Not aggressive, just closing the distance slightly. Marcus's finger twitched on the trigger, but he held his fire. Can I ask you something? Terrell said. Aaliyah waited. The scar I gave you, does it hurt? She touched it briefly. Not anymore. I could have killed you in Cheyenne, but you know that, right? I know. So why did I not? Aaliyah met his eyes. Because you wanted me to suffer. You wanted me to spend 3 weeks knowing I was going to thinking about it, dreading it. Terrell's smile returned. That is part of it, but there is more. He gestured around the shop. I wanted you to come here, to this place, where you bought the gun you used to kill my brothers. I wanted your last thoughts to be about what you had done, about the blood on your hands, about all the lives you destroyed. The only lives I destroyed were the ones that needed destroying, Aaliyah said. You destroyed mine, Terrell said, and for the first time real emotion crept into his voice. I never knew my brothers, never got the chance to meet them, to decide for myself what kind of men they were. You took that from me. Aaliyah's expression softened slightly. I understand that, I do, but it does not change what they did or what needed to happen because of it. No, Terrell said, it does not, but it explains why I am here. He looked around the shop one more time, taking in every detail. This is a nice place. Shame about what is going to happen to it. Marcus's voice was hard. Nothing is going to happen to my shop. Terrell looked at him, really looked at him. You are the one she saved, the convoy in Montana. Marcus's eyes widened slightly. How did you? I told you, Terrell said. I spent 2 years learning everything about her. Every place she went, every life she touched, every person who might matter to her. He smiled again, and this time it was genuinely chilling. I know all about you, Marcus Hayes, about how she saved your life and 50 others, about how you owe her a debt you think you can never repay. Marcus's hands tightened on the shotgun. I also know, Terrell continued, that if I kill her in front of you, it will haunt you for the rest of your life. You will spend every day wondering if you could have stopped it, if you should have done more. You son of a... That is why I chose this place, Terrell said calmly. Not just because of the symbolism, but because I wanted the people who care about her to watch her die, to carry that weight. The way I have carried the weight of knowing my brothers died and I could not stop it. Aaliyah took a step forward, not aggressive, just drawing his attention back to her. Terrell, she said quietly, look at me. He did. Your brothers killed my husband while he slept. They killed 9 other men who had done nothing wrong. They burned our camp and stole everything we had. And they laughed while they did it. Her voice stayed level, but there was iron underneath. I did not enjoy hunting them. I did not take pleasure in their deaths. I did what needed to be done, and then I tried to move on. Did you? Terrell asked. Move on. Aaliyah was quiet for a moment. No, she said. I did not. Because there was always one more story, one more rumor, and eventually one more brother. She gestured to the scar on her face. You gave me this because you wanted me to suffer. Mission accomplished. I have spent 3 weeks wondering if I would survive today, wondering if I still had what it takes, wondering if maybe I should just let you win. Terrell's eyes narrowed. And what did you decide? That I am tired of running? Aaliyah said. Tired of fighting, tired of being what grief made me. She let her hand drop to her gun, not drawing, just resting there. But I am not ready to die, not like this, not for something your brother started 14 years ago. Then what do you want? Terrell asked. I want this to be over, Aaliyah said. One way or another, today, right now. I want to either walk out of here alive and finally be done with the McCrae family, or I want to die knowing I fought until the very end. Terrell studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. I can respect that. Otis cleared his throat. There is another option. You could both walk away right now. End this without more blood. Terrell shook his head. I came here for justice. For my brothers. I am not leaving without it. Your brothers got their justice, Otis said. They got exactly what they deserved. Maybe, Terrell said, but I deserve mine too. Darius's voice came from behind the counter, shaking but determined. You deserve to live your own life, not die for people you never even knew. Terrell looked at him with something almost like sympathy. How old are you, Kit? 24. 24, Terrell repeated. When I was 24, I thought the same way you do. Thought family was just something you were born into. That blood did not mean anything unless you made it mean something. He paused. And then I got those letters. And I realized that whether I knew them or not, they were part of me. Their blood was my blood. Their story was my story. That is not true, Jamal said, finding his voice. You are not them. You do not have to be them. I know that Terrell said, I am not trying to be them. I am trying to honor them. There is a difference. Aaliyah spoke again, her voice tired. Terrell, your brothers would not have wanted this. They would not have wanted you to throw your life away for them. How do you know what they would have wanted? Because I spent 18 months learning everything about them, Aaliyah said, just like you did. And I know that they were practical men. Ruthless, yes. Cruel, yes, but practical. They would not have wanted their youngest brother to die avenging them. You do not get to tell me what my brothers would have wanted, Terrell said. Then ask yourself, Aaliyah said, what would they tell you if they could? Would they want you here, or would they tell you to live the life they never could? For the first time, Terrell hesitated, just for a second, but it was there. Marcus saw the opening and took it. She is right. You are young. You have a whole life ahead of you. Do not throw it away for ghosts. Terrell's jaw tightened. They are not ghosts. They are my brothers. They are dead, Otis said bluntly. And they have been dead for over a decade. Nothing you do today will change that. But it will balance the scales, Terrell said. No, it will not. Aaliyah said, it will just add more weight to both sides. More death, more grief, more people carrying things they can never put down. She took another step forward. I know what that is like, Terrell. I have been carrying it for 14 years, and it does not get lighter. It does not get easier. It just grinds you down until there is nothing left but the weight itself. Terrell looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, Marcus saw something in his eyes besides cold determination. He saw doubt. I made a promise, Terrell said quietly, to myself, to them, that I would see this through. Promises to the dead do not count, Aaliyah said. Only promises to the living matter. And the only person living in this equation is you. And you, Terrell said, for now. The weight of those two words settled over the room. Terrell turned away, facing the window. Outside, the street was still empty. The sun was directly overhead now. No shadows, just harsh, unforgiving light. I have spent 2 years preparing for this, he said, learning to shoot, learning to track, learning everything I would need to know to face you and win. I know, Aaliyah said. How? Because that is what I would have done. Terrell laughed, but there was no humor in it. We are not so different, you and I. No, Aaliyah agreed. We are not. We are both people who let grief turn us into something we never meant to be. She moved closer until she was standing just a few feet away from him. Marcus tensed, ready to fire if Terrell made any sudden moves, but Terrell stayed still. The difference, Aaliyah said, is that I am ready to stop being that thing. I am ready to put down the weight and walk away. Are you? Terrell turned to face her. Up close, Marcus could see that he was not as young as he had first appeared. There were lines around his eyes, gray in his hair, the kind of aging that comes from stress and sleepless nights and carrying burdens too heavy for one person. I do not know if I can, Terrell said, and his voice was barely above a whisper. Why not? Because if I walk away, then what was it all for? The 2 years of training, the hunt, the planning. All of it, it was for nothing, Aaliyah said simply, because it was built on a foundation of pain. And pain does not build anything worth keeping. Terrell's hand drifted toward his gun. Everyone in the room tensed, but he did not draw. He just rested his hand there the same way Aaliyah was doing. Two people, one purpose, both ready to kill or die. I gave you that scar in Cheyenne, Terrell said. Did you know I could have killed you then? You have said that already, Aaliyah said. I mean really killed you, Terrell said. Not just left you wounded. I had 3 more bullets. Could have put them all in you before you hit the ground. Why did you not? Aaliyah asked. Terrell's smile was sad. Because I wanted you to have time to think, to prepare, to come here ready to fight. I did not want to ambush you. I wanted to face you properly. Aaliyah nodded slowly. That is more honor than your brothers ever showed anyone. I am not my brothers, Terrell said. I know, Aaliyah said. That is why I am hoping you will make a different choice than the one we are both prepared to make. Terrell was quiet for a long time. The clock ticked. Outside, a horse whinnied somewhere in the distance. Marcus's arms were getting tired from holding the shotgun ready, but he did not lower it, could not lower it. Otis had not moved at all. He stood like a statue, watching and waiting. Jamal and Darius barely breathed. And in the center of it all, two people stood facing each other. Two people shaped by the same violence. Two people carrying the same kind of weight. One who wanted to put it down, and one who did not know if he could. Finally, Terrell spoke. Tell me about him, he said. Aaliyah frowned. Who, your husband? The man my brothers killed. Tell me about him. Aaliyah's expression flickered. Surprised. Uncertain. Why? Because I want to understand, Terrell said. I have spent 2 years learning about my brothers, learning about you, but I never learned about the man who started all of this. He did not start anything. Aaliyah said, her voice harder. Your brothers started it when they raided our camp. You know what I mean, Terrell said. Aaliyah was quiet for a moment. Then slowly she began to speak. His name was Isaiah. Isaiah Washington. He was 42 when he died. We had been married for 6 years. Her voice took on a different quality, softer, sadder. He was a good man, not perfect, not a saint, but good. He worked hard, treated people fairly, laughed easily. Terrell listened without interrupting. He wanted to build something. Aaliyah continued. A ranch, a legacy, something to pass down to the children we hope to have someday. She paused. We never got the chance. Marcus found himself blinking back something that might have been tears. He loved the land, Aaliyah said. Loved the wide open spaces, the freedom, the possibility of it all. He used to say that the West was where people went to become who they were always meant to be. What did you think, Terrell asked. I thought he was right, Aaliyah said, until the night he died. And then I thought the West was just a place where people went to kill each other. She looked at Terrell directly. Your brothers took him from me, took our future, took everything we had built and burned it to the ground. And they did it for what? A few horses, some supplies, the thrill of it. Terrell had no answer. So yes, Aaliyah said, I hunted them and I killed them and I would do it again because they deserved it, because somebody had to. She took a breath. But I am tired, Terrell, tired of being the person who has to do those things, tired of carrying this weight. And I am asking you, please, do not make me kill one more McCrae. Do not make me carry one more death. The silence that followed was different from before, heavier, more fragile. Like the whole room was balanced on the edge of something, and the slightest movement could send it tumbling one way or the other. Terrell's hand was still on his gun. So was Aaliyah's. Marcus watched them both, his finger resting on the trigger of his shotgun, knowing that if this went wrong, he would have maybe half a second to react, and knowing that half a second probably would not be enough. Otis had positioned himself for a clear shot at Terrell, but Marcus could see the conflict in the old scout's eyes. The desire to end this before it started, warring with the respect for whatever was happening between these two people who understood each other in ways nobody else could. I loved a woman once, Terrell said suddenly. Aaliyah's eyes flickered with surprise. Her name was Mary. We were going to get married, have a family, build a life together. He looked out the window again. But when I got those letters about my brothers, everything changed. I became obsessed. Could not think about anything else. Could not be present for her. His voice went quieter. She left me. Said I was choosing dead men over living ones. She was right, Aaliyah said softly. He turned back to her. I have spent 2 years alone, training, planning, preparing. And for what? To kill a woman I do not even know. To avenge men I never met. To honor a family that abandoned me before I was born. His hand trembled slightly on his gun. Tell me, Aaliyah, when you killed my brothers, did it bring your husband back? No, Aaliyah said. Did it make the pain go away? No. Did it fix anything at all? Aaliyah's voice was barely audible. No, it just made me into something else, something I never wanted to be. Terrell nodded slowly. That is what I thought. He looked down at his gun at his hand resting on the grip. I am 20 years younger than you. I could have another 40 years ahead of me. 50 if I am lucky. You could, Aaliyah agreed, and what do I want those years to be? More of this, more anger, more violence, more carrying weight that is not even mine to carry. Only you can answer that, Aaliyah said. Terrell's hand moved. Everyone tensed, but he did not draw his gun. He lifted his hand away from it, slowly, deliberately, and then he took a step back. Marcus did not lower his shotgun. Not yet. Otis kept his pistol ready, but something had changed in the room, something fundamental. I am tired too, Terrell said. Tired of being angry. Tired of planning a revenge. Tired of being defined by men I never knew. He looked at Aaliyah with something that might have been respect or understanding or just exhaustion. My brothers made their choices. They lived the lives they chose, and they died because of it. That is on them, not on me. Aaliyah's hand moved away from her gun as well. So what now, she asked. Terrell was quiet for a moment. Then he walked back to the door and picked up his hat. Now I leave. Go back to my life. Try to figure out who I am when I am not trying to be someone's avenging brother. He put his hat on, adjusted it. And you, he asked. I do not know, Aaliyah said honestly. I have been so focused on surviving this that I have not thought about what comes after. Terrell nodded. Well, you have got time to figure it out now. He reached for the door handle. Marcus finally spoke. That is it. You are just leaving. Terrell looked at him. You want me to stay? Try to kill her anyway. No, Marcus said. I do not understand. Neither do I, Terrell said. But sometimes the right thing does not make sense. It is just right. He opened the door. The bell jingled. Fresh air swept into the shop, carrying the smell of dust and sunlight. Terrell paused in the doorway, looking back at Aaliyah one more time. For what it is worth, he said, I am sorry about your husband. No man should die like that. And I am sorry about your brothers, Aaliyah said. Even though they deserved what they got, I am sorry you had to carry the weight of their choices. Terrell smiled, a real smile this time. Sad but genuine. Take care of yourself, Aaliyah Washington. You too, Terrell McCrae. He stepped outside. The door closed behind him. The bell jingled one last time, and then he was gone. Nobody moved for a long moment. They all stood there processing what had just happened, or rather, what had not happened. Finally, Marcus lowered his shotgun. His arms were shaking, and not just from holding the weapon ready for so long. Did that really just happen? Jamal asked from behind the counter. I think so. Darius said, his voice awed. Otis holstered his pistol and walked to the window, looked out at the street. Terrell was mounting his horse, moving slowly, not running, not hiding, just leaving. He is really going, Otis said. Aaliyah moved to the window as well, stood beside Otis, watching as Terrell McCrae rode away down the dusty street. The man who had come to kill her, the last of the McCrae brothers. The end of 14 years of violence and grief and hunting. Riding away, choosing life over death, choosing himself over his ghosts. Marcus came to stand on her other side. Together, the three of them watched until Terrell was out of sight, until he was just dust on the horizon. And then even the dust was gone. Aaliyah let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. Her legs suddenly felt weak. She reached out to steady herself against the window frame. Are you all right, Marcus asked. She nodded, but she was not sure if it was true. For 14 years, she had been the Washington widow, the hunter, the woman who had tracked 6 men across 3 territories and brought them all back dead. That had been her purpose, her identity, the thing that gave her life meaning when everything else had been taken away. And now it was over, just like that. No gunfight, no violence, no final confrontation. Just a conversation and a choice and a man walking away. She did not know what to do with that. did not know who she was supposed to be now. Mrs. Washington, Otis said quietly, "You just did something I have never seen before." She looked at him. "You ended a blood feud without spilling blood. That takes more courage than killing ever could." Jamal and Darius emerged from behind the counter, moving cautiously like they were not sure the danger was really over. "Is he coming back?" Darius asked. "No," Aaliyah said. "He is not." "How do you know?" "Because I saw it in his eyes. He made his choice, and he is the kind of man who will stick to it." Jamal shook his head in disbelief. "I thought for sure someone was going to die today." "So did I," Aaliyah admitted. Marcus set his shotgun down on the counter. His hands were still shaking. "I need a drink," he said. Nobody argued. He pulled out a bottle of whiskey from under the counter and 5 glasses, poured generous amounts into each. Then he handed them out. "To survival," he said, raising his glass. "To peace," Otis added. "To second chances," Aaliyah said quietly. They all drank. The whiskey burned going down, but it was a good burn, a living burn, the burn of people who had stared death in the face and lived to tell about it. Jamal set down his glass and looked at Aaliyah with new eyes. "Ma'am, I owe you an apology for earlier, for what I said. I was wrong about everything." Darius nodded quickly. "Me too. We were complete idiots." Aaliyah almost smiled. "You were young. That is different. We were old enough to know better," Jamal said. "Maybe," Aaliyah said, "but you are old enough now to learn from it. That is what matters." She finished her whiskey and set the glass down. "Thank you, all of you, for standing with me even when you did not have to." "We had to," Marcus said. "You saved my life once. I was not going to let you face this alone, even if I had told you to." "Especially then," Marcus said. Aaliyah nodded slowly. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out her gun. Everyone tensed for a moment before realizing she was not drawing it to use it. She was just looking at it. The Colt that had been her companion for 14 years. The tool she had used to hunt 6 men across 3 territories. The weight she had carried every day. She set it on the counter. "I bought this here," she said, 14 years ago, when I was still just a widow trying to figure out what to do with her grief." Marcus looked at the gun, recognized it. "I remember. You were very specific about what you wanted, custom grip, specific barrel length." "I thought you were just being particular." "I was being practical," Aaliyah said. "I needed a gun that would become an extension of myself because I knew what I was going to do with it." She ran her fingers along the grip one last time. "I think I am done with it now." Marcus frowned. "You are giving up your gun." "I am not giving it up. I am just done carrying it everywhere. Done sleeping with it under my pillow. Done being the kind of person who needs it." She looked at him. "Can you hold on to it for me in case I ever need it again?" "Of course," Marcus said. He picked up the gun carefully, with respect. Then he placed it in a secure drawer under the counter. "It will be here whenever you want it back." "Thank you," Aaliyah said. She turned toward the door. "Where will you go?" Otis asked. She paused, one hand on the doorframe. "I do not know. I have not thought that far ahead. For the first time in 14 years, I do not have a plan, do not have a purpose." "That sounds terrifying," Darius said. Aaliyah smiled, a real smile this time. "Small but genuine. It is. But it is also freeing." She looked back at them one more time. "Thank you, all of you, for reminding me that there is more to life than vengeance, more to being human than just surviving." And then she stepped outside into the bright afternoon sun. The door closed behind her. The bell jingled softly, and the shop fell quiet once more. Marcus stood at the window long after Aaliyah had disappeared from view. The street outside had returned to normal. A wagon passed by. A woman with a basket walked toward the general store. 2 children chased each other down the sidewalk laughing. Life continuing on like nothing had happened. Like the world had not just shifted in some fundamental way. Otis came to stand beside him. The old scout's face was thoughtful, distant, like he was seeing something beyond the present moment. "You all right?" Marcus asked. Otis nodded slowly, just thinking. I have seen a lot of things in my life. Wars, battles, men dying for causes they believed in, men dying for nothing at all. He paused. But I have never seen anyone choose peace the way those two just did. Not when violence was easier, not when they had every reason to kill each other. Marcus turned from the window. You think they made the right choice? I think they made the only choice that mattered, Otis said. Everything else would have just been more of the same. More death, more grief, more weight for people to carry. Jesse was cleaning up the glasses, moving quietly like he was afraid to disturb something fragile. Darius sat on a stool behind the counter, staring at nothing. Both of them had been changed by what they had witnessed. Marcus could see it in their faces, the way they moved, the silence they carried. Boss Jamal said finally, "What do we tell people when they ask what happened here today?" Marcus considered the question. It was a good one, important, because this was a small town. Word would spread. People would want to know why the shop had been closed, why there had been tension in the air, why a strange man had ridden into town and then ridden away again. We tell them the truth, Marcus said. Jamal frowned. The whole truth, no, just the truth that matters. We tell them that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is walk away from a fight they could win. Otis nodded approvingly. Darius looked up. Will anyone believe it? Probably not, Marcus said. But that is all right. The truth is not for them. It is for us, for the people who were here, who saw it. He moved back behind the counter and picked up his shotgun, started unloading it with practiced hands. The Drummond widow walked into my shop today, Marcus said quietly, and she walked out again. Alive, free, no longer carrying the weight she had carried for 14 years. That is all anyone needs to know. Otis moved toward the door. I should be going. Got things to do before sundown. Marcus looked at him. You will keep this quiet as the dead Otis said. Then he smiled slightly. But I will remember it, every detail, every word. Someday when I am older and the world has forgotten what honor looks like, maybe I will tell this story. Remind people what it means to be strong. He touched the brim of his hat in a small salute. It has been an honor, gentlemen. And then he was gone too. The bell above the door jingled one more time, then fell silent. Marcus, Jamal, and Darius were alone in the shop. The three of them stood there for a moment, not speaking, just being present with what had happened, what they had witnessed, what it meant. Finally, Jamal broke the silence. I am sorry, he said. Marcus looked at him. For what? For how I acted, for what I said to her, for being so, he struggled to find the word, so damn stupid. You did not know, Marcus said. That is no excuse. I should have treated her with respect from the start. Should have treated everyone with respect. Darius nodded. Me too. I just went along with it because I wanted to fit in. Wanted you guys to think I was tough. Jamal looked at him. I am not tough. I am just loud. There is a difference. Yeah, Darius said. I am starting to see that. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, something warm and sad and hopeful all at once. These boys had learned something today, something important, something they would carry with them for the rest of their lives. And maybe that was part of the reason Aaliyah had come here, not just to face Terrell, but to teach people like Jamal and Darius what real strength looked like. You want to know what being tough really means, Marcus asked. They both looked at him. It means doing the right thing even when it is hard, even when it costs you, even when nobody is watching. He set his shotgun down and leaned against the counter. Mrs. Washington could have killed Terrell McCrae today. Had every reason to, every right to. He came here to kill her. He had already hurt her once, and she had the skill to do it. Jamal and Darius listened intently, but she did not. She talked to him instead, shared her pain with him, helped him see that revenge would not fix anything. And when he made the choice to leave, she let him go. Marcus's voice was quiet but firm. That is what being tough really means. Not being the fastest gun, not being the loudest voice, but being strong enough to show mercy, brave enough to choose peace. The afternoon wore on. Customers came and went. Normal business resumed. The world kept turning, but something had changed in Hayes' gun shop. Something subtle but real. Jamal was more thoughtful with customers, more patient. He listened before he spoke, thought before he acted. Darius worked with a quiet focus he had not shown before, like he was trying to prove something to himself, to be better than he had been. And Marcus watched them both with something close to pride. Around 4 o'clock, the door opened and a man walked in. Middle-aged, wearing a deputy's badge. Clay Morgan, the local law. He looked around the shop with professional eyes, took in the way things had been moved, the slight tension that still hung in the air. "Marcus," he said, "heard there was some trouble here today." Marcus met his gaze calmly. "Nothing I could not handle." That right, Morgan looked around again. "You sure about that?" "Everything is fine." Morgan studied him for another moment. Two men who had known each other for years, who understood the unspoken language of small-town politics and selective truth. Finally, Morgan nodded slowly. "Well, long as everyone is all right, everyone is fine." "Good, good." Morgan moved toward the door, then paused. "That widow who has been living quiet on the edge of town. Mrs. Washington, you seen her around today?" Marcus's expression did not change. "Cannot say that I have." "Huh. Someone said they saw her heading this direction this morning. Thought maybe she was looking to buy something. If she was, she changed her mind. Have not seen her." Morgan studied him for another moment. Then he shrugged. "All right then. You have yourself a good afternoon, Marcus. You too, deputy." The door closed. Jamal let out a breath he had been holding. "You just lied to the law." I told him what he needed to know. Marcus corrected. "There is a difference." Darius frowned. "But will he not find out the truth eventually? Maybe. Maybe not. But by then it will not matter. Whatever happened here today is done. Over. No point in dragging the law into something that has already resolved itself." Marcus moved to the window and looked out at the empty street. "Besides," he added, "some stories are not meant for official reports. Some stories are meant to be told around campfires and in quiet moments between people who understand." Evening came slowly. The sun began its descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Marcus sent Jamal and Darius home early, told them to get some rest, to think about what they had seen, to let it settle in. They left quietly without their usual banter and noise. When they were gone, Marcus locked the front door and flipped the sign to closed. Then he went to the back room and sat down in his old wooden chair, the one his father had used, and his grandfather before that. He closed his eyes and let the silence wash over him. 14 years ago, Aaliyah Washington had saved his life, saved 50 lives. And he had spent all those years since wondering how to repay that debt, how to honor what she had done. He had offered her money, refused, offered her a job, refused, offered her anything she might need, always refused. She told him once that the best way to honor what she had done was to live well, to be a good man, to treat people with dignity. He tried. God knew he tried. But there was always that nagging feeling that it was not enough, that he owed her something more, something he could not define or provide. Today, though, something had shifted. Today, he had stood beside her when she needed someone to stand with her. He had been willing to fight, if necessary. But more than that, he had witnessed something profound. He had seen her choose peace over violence, mercy over revenge, life over death. And somehow in that witnessing, the debt had finally been paid. Not through action, not through sacrifice, but through understanding, through respect, through being present for the moment that mattered. Marcus opened his eyes and looked around his shop. This place had been in his family for 3 generations. It had sold guns to farmers and ranchers and lawmen and outlaws. It had been part of countless stories, countless lives. But today it had been part of something different. Today it had been the place where a legend ended, where a woman who had spent 14 years being something she never wanted to be had finally laid down her burden. And Marcus was grateful to have been part of that, grateful to have witnessed it, grateful to have known her. 3 days passed. Aaliyah did not return to the gun shop immediately. She needed time to think, to process, to figure out who she was when she was not defined by the things she had been hunting. She spent those days walking the outskirts of town, watching the skiing, feeling the sun on her face, simple things, human things, things she had not allowed herself to notice in years. On the fourth day she came back. Marcus was working behind the counter when the door opened. He looked up and saw Aaliyah standing there. She looked different somehow, softer, less guarded. "Mrs. Washington," he said, "I did not expect to see you again so soon. I have been thinking," she said, "about what comes next, about who I want to be now that I am not defined by the past anymore." Marcus set down the gun he had been cleaning. And, uh, and I realized I do not know how to just be a person anymore. I have been a hunter for so long, a weapon, a force of vengeance. She moved into the shop slowly, looking around like she was seeing it for the first time. "I thought maybe you could help me remember. Help you remember how to be normal, how to live a life that is not about survival or vengeance or carrying weight." Marcus smiled. "I think you are already doing it. Coming here, asking for help. That is living." Maybe Aaliyah said, "But it feels strange, wrong almost." "That is because it is new," Marcus said. "Give it time. It will start to feel right." Aaliyah nodded slowly. Then she looked at the drawer where he had stored her gun. "Is it still there, where you left it?" Marcus said. "Good," Aaliyah said. "I like knowing it is here, that I could take it if I needed it, but that I do not need it right now." She turned toward the door, then paused. "Thank you, Marcus, for everything, for standing with me, for understanding, for being a good man." "You made it easy," Marcus said. "You are one of the best people I have ever known." Aaliyah's smile was small but genuine. "I am not sure about that, but I am going to try to be better. That is all I can do." And then she left. But this time Marcus knew she would be back. Not as the Washington widow, not as the hunter, just as Aaliyah, a woman learning to live again. 6 months passed. The season changed. Summer gave way to fall. The border town settled into its rhythms. Marcus's gun shop continued its daily business. Jamal and Darius had changed, matured. They treated every customer with respect now. Listened before they spoke. Thought before they judged. Aaliyah had opened a small seamstress shop at the edge of town. Nothing grand, nothing that drew attention. Just honest work that allowed her to contribute and connect. She took in mending, made simple clothes, taught young black girls how to sew, gave them a skill they could use to support themselves. People in town started knowing her as Mrs. Washington the seamstress, not the widow, not the legend, just Aaliyah. And that was exactly what she wanted. One evening, Marcus stopped by her shop just before closing. He brought a basket of food, fresh bread, some cheese, a bit of dried meat. "Thought you might be hungry," he said. Aaliyah smiled. "Come in." They sat together in the small back room of her shop, ate the simple meal, talked about small things, the weather, the town, the way the light looked this time of year. It was comfortable, easy, the kind of conversation two people have when they have survived something together and no longer need to explain themselves. "How are you doing?" Marcus asked eventually. Aaliyah was quiet for a moment, then better. "Some days are harder than others, but I am learning to just be, not to hunt, not to plan, just to exist." "That sounds like progress," Marcus said. "It is," Aaliyah agreed. "Slow progress, but progress." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Marcus spoke again. "I heard something interesting today." Aaliyah looked at him. About Terrell McCrae." Aaliyah went very still. What about him he is teaching, Marcus said, at a school for black children in Kansas, teaching them to read, to write, to think for themselves. Elia's eyes glistened slightly. He chose to live, yes, Marcus said. He did. Good, Elia said softly. That is the right choice. They sat together until the light faded and the first stars appeared. Then Marcus stood to leave. Before he reached the door, Elia spoke. Marcus. He turned. Thank you for checking on me, for being a friend. Always, Marcus said. 3 years passed. The turn of the century came. 1900, then 1901, 1902. The Old West was changing, becoming something new, more civilized, more settled. The days of frontier justice and blood feuds were fading into memory, but some stories remained. In 1903, Marcus Hayes died quietly in his sleep at the age of 58. Heart gave out, quick and peaceful, the way a good man should go. At his funeral, Jamal and Darius spoke about what Marcus had taught them, about respect, about dignity, about the difference between being loud and being strong. They talked about how he had shown them that real courage was not about fighting, it was about choosing the right path even when it was hard. Among the mourners was Aaliyah Washington, now 52 years old, gray-haired but upright, dignified, strong. She stood quietly in the back, listening to the stories people told about Marcus, about his kindness, his fairness, his quiet strength. When the service ended, people approached her with respect. They knew her as the seamstress who had been friends with Marcus, the quiet widow who had lived among them for years. Only a few knew the whole truth, and that was how she preferred it. After everyone had left, Aaliyah stood alone at Marcus's grave. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything, for standing with me, for respecting me, for helping me remember how to be human. The wind moved through the cemetery, carrying the smell of wild grass and distant mountains. You saved my life, you know, she continued. Not in Montana, not with the convoy, but on that Tuesday in your shop, when you stood beside me, when you did not judge, when you just let me be whoever I needed to be. She placed a small bouquet of wildflowers on the grave. Rest well, Marcus Hayes. You were a good man. The world is poorer without you. And then she walked away, back to her small shop at the edge of town, back to her quiet life, back to being just Aaliyah. 12 more years passed. The world changed. Automobiles appeared on the streets. Electricity came to small towns. The Old West became history, then legend, then myth. In 1915, Aaliyah Washington died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 64. She had lived the last 26 years of her life without violence, without hunting, without revenge. She had become, in her own words, just a woman who had lived through hard times and come out the other side. Her will left her small house and savings to the local black church, her few possessions to friends she had made over the years, and a small wooden box to Jamal, who was now running Hayes Gun Shop. Inside the box was a letter and a gun, the Colt she had used to hunt the McCrae brothers, the weapon that had defined her for so many years. The letter was simple, Jamal. I leave this gun to you not as a weapon, but as a reminder of the day you learned that true strength comes from character, not violence. Of the day you saw two people choose peace over revenge. Keep it safe. Show it to people who need to understand that the bravest thing we can do is choose mercy, that the strongest thing we can be is kind. Tell my story if you want, but tell it true. I was not a hero. I was just a woman who made mistakes and tried to do better. That is all any of us can hope for. With respect and affection, Aaliyah Washington. Jamal read the letter 3 times, tears running down his face. Then he placed the gun in a special case in his shop. Not for sale, not for use, just for remembering. And above it he placed a small plaque that read, "The gun of Aaliyah Washington, who taught us that the strongest people are the ones who choose not to fight." The years continued to pass. The Old West became history, then legend, then myth. The stories blurred and changed. Facts became fiction, truth became tale. But some stories stayed true. In small towns across Texas and Kansas, old men still told the story of the Washington widow, of how she had hunted 6 men and shown mercy to the seventh, of how she had chosen peace when violence would have been easier. And sometimes late at night when the fire was low and the audience was quiet, someone would ask, "Do you think it really happened that way?" And the storyteller would smile and say, "Does it matter, true or not? It is the story we need." The reminder that revenge does not fix anything, that mercy is stronger than violence, that we always have a choice even when it does not feel like it. The fire would crackle, the stars would shine, the wind would move through the darkness, and somewhere in the vast and beautiful West, the legend of a scarred widow would live on. Not as a tale of violence, but as a story of peace. Not as a lesson about revenge, but as a reminder about mercy. Not as an ending, but as a beginning. The beginning of understanding that the strongest people are often the quietest. That real courage looks like kindness. That true power comes from choosing life over death. And that sometimes the most important stories are not about heroes and villains. They are about broken people finding their way back to being human. In a small gun shop in Texas, now run by Jamal's daughter, a young black woman with kind eyes and steady hands, a Colt revolver sits in a glass case. Visitors sometimes ask about it, and she tells them the story. Not all of it, not the parts that are too personal or too painful, but the parts that matter. About a woman who had been hurt, who had fought back, who had spent years carrying weight no one should carry, and about the day she chose to put that weight down. The day she chose peace. The day she chose life. And when the story is done, the visitors nod thoughtfully. Some understand immediately, some need time to process. But they all walk away thinking about their own lives, their own choices, their own weights they carry, and maybe, just maybe, wondering if they too could choose differently, could choose mercy over revenge, peace over violence, life over death. That is the real legacy of Aaliyah Washington. Not the 6 men she killed, but the one man she saved, and in doing so saved herself. The sun sets over the Texas plains. The sky burns gold and orange and red. The wind carries the smell of ye and earth impossibility. And somewhere in the vast silence of the West, a story continues. A story about a scarred widow who walked into a gun shop on a Tuesday morning, who faced her demons with quiet courage, who showed the world that real strength does not announce itself, it just waits patiently until the moment comes to choose, and then it chooses mercy every single time.